Welcome to Fair Luxury's open house. We'll start off in a second with some introductions to our speakers, but in the meantime I'll do a bit of kind of hello and housekeeping while people are joining. My name is Victoria War. I'm going to be hosting the session today. I am a sustainability consultant. I help people, jewellery brands and fashion brands, to work more sustainably. I'm also a member of the Fair Luxury team. Fair Luxury, if you don't already know, is a group of jewellery industry professionals, all with a shared commitment to work in a way that has a positive impact on people and the planet. And we want to share our learnings and learn from you guys by coming together at events like this, Fair Luxury's open house events. These are set up as a way of a kind of informal way of discussing the challenges, the opportunities, the innovations that are happening around sustainable sourcing or responsible production methods in the jewellery sector, with the aim of working together to improve and to make a difference collectively. This open house session is a pledge themed open house session. The Fair Luxury pledge is a kind of slightly more formal way of making a commitment to doing something better in your business. So to set a kind of concrete goal for the year that you can work towards and be accountable to a community of people to help you achieve that. If you haven't already made your pledge, you can do that at any time by going to the Fair Luxury website and signing up, letting us know what it is that you're planning to do this year, and then kind of linking into these events as they go on throughout the year. To help if you get stuck with any challenges, and to kind of have a peer group to share and learn from. Today's open house is all about packaging. We'll kickstart in a minute. We've got some great speakers to talk to you about more sustainable packaging options. We've chosen packaging because it's always a hot topic whenever we come together as a community, and already a lot of our people involved with Fair Luxury have made pledges around improving their packaging. So we felt that this is a kind of good one to have a chat about. If you haven't already noticed, this session is being recorded, certainly the first part of it where our speakers are involved. So that's just to kind of let you know that. If you'd like to ask any questions, and we encourage questions throughout, please do so in the chat, and my colleague Liz, who's also a Fair Luxury team member, she'll be helping to answer those, and we'll try to kind of answer as many of them as possible as we go along. If we don't get to your question, sorry, but we will follow up with you afterwards. Hopefully we're going to cover a lot of the topics that you're interested in today. So we've got three guest speakers. The first speaker is Sarah Greenaway. Sarah is a freelance consultant. She also supports businesses on their sustainability journey, so sustainability strategy. And she does some work with a sustainable packaging consultancy called Root. So she's got lots of experience around packaging. She used to run her own jewellery business, and has also worked for a number of big businesses in kind of marketing and packaging. So she's a great person to give us an initial kind of insight into what sustainable packaging actually is, why it's important, and some of the opportunities and pitfalls that you might like to consider when you're on your sustainable packaging journey. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, and we'll come to your questions when she's finished talking to you. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Yes. Okay. Lovely to see everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about one of my favourite topics. This is going to be a very quick canter because we don't have very long, and I think it's more important that you have the opportunity to ask questions and chat. So forgive the speed, but hopefully it will give you an idea. My aim with this really is to give you a bit of a framework to use when you're looking for packaging, when you're thinking about it, just a bit of a mental checklist of what to look out for, because it is a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack, and it can be a bit overwhelming. So yeah, hopefully at the end of it you'll have a bit of a feel for the things to think about, and yeah, store up your questions and then we can come to those at the end. I've forgotten who's driving the slides, but do you want to just skip over to the next slide, please? Thank you. Susie's on the driving seat. Okay, so this slide will take me about 2 minutes because I'm preaching to converted. I don't really need to talk to you about why this matters. I think, but what I will say is, in terms of things to have in your mind, the two big issues to be thinking about are resource scarcity. So obviously things like trees and paper, and then pollution and waste. That goes without saying, plastic being the big culprit on the waste end of things. Carbon emissions, increasingly a thing, increasingly important. So I would say be learning, have that on your eye on that for a bit further down the track. Consumers aren't really there yet. Legislation isn't quite there yet, but it's going to become more and more topical. So just have your eye on it so you're learning. And then the human rights piece, again, in the world that you're in, I don't really need to talk about that. You understand it. It applies to factories in the Far East particularly, but it's all over the world, as you know, and in manufacturing, it's definitely one to have your eye open on. Again, preaching to converted, why it should matter to you, you kind of know, but I think the big bit for me is if your packaging doesn't align with the proposition of your jewellery, then that immediately rings bells for people and they're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, I thought this was supposed to be ethical, and then they're looking at the packaging, and the consumers are so critical, they love to catch you out, they love it. So they'll be looking for something and say, oh yeah, but you've got plastic in there. So I think it's a bit of a bind being accused of things, because often you have to make compromises, but I think it's really important that you're really clear about the decisions that you've made and that you can talk about them to customers confidently. And if you have had to make a compromise somewhere, let's say plastic tape, because that's always a hard one, that you know that and you talk about it. So I think it's good to be very mindful of the decisions that you've made, is all I would say. And lastly, again, don't really need to say that it matters to consumers. It really does now, increasingly so. Quite a nice little study I found done by Draper's magazine about sustainability in the fashion industry. And you can see on the right there, I guess the key one was saying that as of January 2023, 81% of consumers are looking for sustainable packaging. So I don't need to give you those numbers. You know that it's a thing. You've only got to look around you in the supermarket to know that it's massively important to consumers. So I'll stop on that point. This is the bit that I think hopefully is helpful, to have this kind of checklist of things to think about. And I've picked out reimagine more than anything else, because to me that is the big message. The big takeaway for me is for you would be, just don't go down the standard, I've got to have a display box with a foam insert, because probably can't. And there are so many more creative, inventive, charming ways of doing things. And actually thinking creatively about a problem is totally your strength. So I go off piece, look at different sectors, look at different products, really just think right out about, throw away the kind of preconceptions of what you think jewelry packaging should be, and reinvent it. I was just saying earlier that when I had my jewelry business, one of the things I was looking at was using little pieces of felt and pinning things to pieces of felt, because that was just a different way of doing it. And the foam inserts is an impossible thing, but we'll come back to that. So reimagine, just rethink it, just don't be constricted. Refuse is a really big one. So there are some things that I certainly, and I should say it's 2 years since I've been in the jewelry industry, so things have moved on at pace, I know, but I absolutely could find no alternative to the inserts in presentation boxes, the foam inserts. There was nothing apart from cardboard, which isn't very premium. The felt solution was okay, but wasn't great. I didn't quite crack it. I feel sure that you can, but there are some things that you just got to accept. I just can't have that, and I've got to find another way around it. And I think that's a good example. The other ones you'll be really familiar with: repurpose. You might want to upcycle stuff, reduce. Yeah, just what don't I need? Is it really important to have that bit? Make sure stuff is recycled and recyclable. Rot is stretching the compostable piece, but I'll come on to a few watch outs on there in a while. And the regenerative bit, you'll hear that word starting to pop up more and more. That's really thinking about, is the material that's being used in a perfect world, the material that's being used for your packaging would be regenerative, i.e. if it's timber, then it's absolutely coming from a well-managed forest that is managed for more than just trees. That's a much bigger, richer conversation, and it's something that's coming along the line. So be thinking about it and thinking about how does this decision help to make things better generally, as opposed to just minimizing the damage. That's the 7. Yeah, next slide, please. So I'm going to just nip through the 4 categories of things that we're all interested in. So presentation boxes, bags, packaging, mailing packaging, and something else we're going to. So I picked out for each thing, what are the key themes, what are the things to watch out for, and what's sort of best. There is no best, but presentation boxes are always really hard. The industry thinks of it as it's a must-have. If it's a luxury product, it's got to have this beautiful presentation box. That's all the standard stuff. It's a question of being brave and challenging norms and doing things differently. And you're already doing things so differently. I think that's fine. And I would be very surprised if your customers aren't expecting you to do something different anyway. Goes with the territory really of the innovations that you're already doing in your jewellery. So I think from my perspective, I don't think that's too hard. I think the main things here are waste and resource scarcity. So waste around plastic, and resource scarcity around paper, and thinking about what the materials that the boxes are made from. And also from a 7 R's thing, refuse, as in that's my thing about you just can't have foam inserts, sorry. Be brave enough and bold enough and kind of believe enough to say, I'm just not doing that and not having it, and find an alternative, and be proud of that and say so, like, we don't do this because. And reimagine. I think I've banged on enough about that. The watch outs really in the boxer side of things would be checking that any cardboard or board or paper is from a certified sustainable source. And you'll see the last point on there is greenwash. It's on all of them. There are lots of manufacturers who will say it's eco-friendly. Don't take that. Don't take that. Ask them why. How is it eco-friendly? What is it that's eco-friendly? And really interrogate until you get a good answer. And if they say, well, our paper's eco-friendly, ask them, what do you mean by that? Is it recycled? Is it from FSC sources? What exactly is it that you're doing with this paper that makes it sustainable and eco-friendly? Because otherwise they'll kind of twist the facts. And greenwashing is a big thing, as we know. Plastic in any form is just not okay, because of the disposal more than anything, but also the footprint of making anything plastic is horrendous. So it's kind of best just to say bye-bye to plastic, really, in the world that we're in. Another one to look out for, it's not a total no, but it's not great, is metal foil embossing on bags and boxes, because it makes the material not recyclable. Some time ago, I used to work for B&Q, and we banned all metal embossed wrapping paper. In fact, I'm not certain that's not been banned in the UK altogether, because it just can't be recycled once it's got the metal embossing on it. So I know it's beautiful and I know it's premium, but it is a problem. And there are lots of other things that can be done. And yeah, greenwash. Is there anything else on presentation boxes? I think not. What's best? Well, probably paper and board is always going to be the best solution, rather than plastic. But as I say, look out for the source, dig back into where's it come from, and ideally ask for proof, although often they won't provide it. But once you start questioning and they get uncomfortable, you'll know if they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And reimagined inserts, talked about that enough. Okay, next one, please. What's time? Pouches, pouches, okay. This one's quite hard. The kind of key themes of waste, so anything with plastic in it, it's a bit of a no. And same with the resource scarcity piece. I think the other bit to think about that I've actually put in the watch outs is the type of fabric. So obviously plastics and synthetics, same, and that's the waste piece, but also natural fabrics, checking that they're organic, making sure they're responsibly dyed. That's quite difficult. Goes back to the resource scarcity piece. All these things are very deeply interwoven, as you will know. The other watch out on things like pouches is manufacturing standards. And I know that the big issue everybody faces all the time is volumes. You can't have pouches made to your specification because you don't reach the minimum order quantity that they're looking for. And even if you buy off the shelf ones, you still need to be asking the questions about where have these been made, how have they been made, what are the standards in the factory where they're being stitched. I mean, particularly anything to do with fabrics and fashion is tricky, so you need to have your eye on that. Greenwash again. What's best? Paper. And oh, it looks like I've copied and pasted that one and not changed it. I think cotton fabrics, you know, in an ideal world, organic cotton, in an ideal world, you get them made by a small producer. You'd be surprised what you can find on Etsy. I mean, I'm sure you've all dug around on Etsy lots of times, but there are lots of people making small runs of things on Etsy, and you may well find somebody who'd be willing to do little, you know, small amounts of pouches. And I did contemplate making them for myself at one point, and then decided that wasn't really very practical. But you may find smaller sources, smaller manufacturers on somewhere like Etsy. Okay, next, please, next slide. Thank you. Bags, if you use bags, and I was just saying earlier, my solution in the end was to buy presentation boxes, cardboard from, I think I used the Tiny Box Company and/or Potters, who are both on the case with this, and seem to be pretty good suppliers. And I had a generic box. No, I lied. I had a generic bag. No, I didn't. Yeah, I had a generic bag. I had a generic bag that I used for everything. So that was the branded bag, had a nice ribbon. I'll come back to that. And then the boxes, I bought earring boxes, necklace boxes, bracelet boxes, and they all went in the bag. And the bag was the thing that was printed with my logo and stuff on it and branded strongly, because then I could have the same bag. It gave me bigger volume and the ability to reach a volume. And I knew that actually, even though I had to buy a lot of bags, I would get through them because I was using it every single time. So I had a plain bag, a plain box in a bespoke bag, if that makes sense. So key themes, yeah, waste, again, obviously not plastic, resource scarcity, timber, we've talked about that, reimagine, yeah, just think about, one of the other things that is really, really popular, buy standard bags and then bespoke them yourself, so stamp them or use ribbon or ties or interesting little creative ways of binding them. You can get some lovely paper binds that tie and twist with cotton and thread. So searching around for off-the-shelf things that you can put together in a way that's unique to you is really the best solution, I think. Watch out for plastic, of course, watch out for embossing, we've talked about that. Synthetic ribbon, that's what I was just about to say, be careful on ribbon. It seems like such a small thing, but actually synthetic ribbons just hang around forever and are horrible. Finding cotton ribbon is not that difficult. It's a bit of a slog to find, but you can find it. So I would really recommend that. And again, just challenge any suppliers that you're talking to. Ask, where does it come from? Where do you get it from? Who's made it? Where's it made? Just be a pain and ask. And it's great because the more you ask, the more they'll be saying, oh, we need to sort this out. You know, we need to do, we're not very good at this. The more they know their customers are looking for sustainable solutions, the harder they're going to work. And what's best? Again, paper and natural material closures. So I think this is back to the thinking creatively, thinking naturally. Use something that's off the peg. Use paper, but just use a nice little white paper bag and do something creative with that. I think with some playing, there are lots of solutions to come up with. Next one, please. Mailing, packaging. This is a bit hard, but there are so many more solutions now. Obviously, brown envelopes are best, but just beware of bubble wrap fillings. So like Jiffy bags are horrible because they're full of plastic. I noted a while back, I did notice that I think Jiffy, somebody, and again, it just requires a bit of searching, is doing those bags now stuffed with natural wool, I think. So you don't have to have plastic ones, or use, in the end, I think I just use cardboard boxes or pouches. There's quite a few things available. Avoid tape is tricky, but there are biodegradable tapes and recycled tapes now, and also washi tape. Japanese washi tape, if you've never seen that, is a beautiful thing, very beautiful thing. I think absolutely perfect for what you're looking for. So have a look at washi. There's lots of beautiful things there. And then in terms of what's best for the mailing and packaging, yeah, it's always going to be paper or cardboard, and always trying to work with natural materials, but also look for recyclable solutions. And the brands I love best send you returnable packaging that you can reseal if you want to return. And I think that lots of those now are coming off the peg as well. So you should be able to find those at small volumes, I would think. Yeah. So in summary, thank you. Think about the 7 R's. just keep running through those. Have I thought about those? Especially the refuse. Be brave enough to say, I'm just not doing that. However difficult it is, I'm just not doing it. Be a pain in the neck. Keep asking. Where did it come from? How do I know it's sustainable? What did you do that's different? Just yeah, don't be afraid to be a pain. Be super creative. You're great at that, and don't give up. And that's kind of, yeah, that's my last piece really. And to be here where you are on the fair luxury journey, you're not give up us anyway. So there's always an answer.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really informative.
Okay.
81% of consumers want sustainable packaging. I mean, that's a really high number, isn't it? You know,
it's a nice study that. I'll send it to you because there's some quite interesting stuff in it. I'll send it to you.
Great. I mean, you know, if we're all here because we already kind of know that it's necessary, but knowing that many of our customers want sustainable packaging, maybe will give us that impetus to kind of keep on plugging away at it, like you said, and reimagining what the packaging needs to be. Interestingly, for my jewellery brand that I'm creating at the moment, we did a focus group recently where we took some people through the packaging that we're creating, and there are no boxes in our packaging, and almost all of the feedback was, where's the box? Where's the jewellery box? And we were mortified by that because we don't want jewellery boxes in our business. But when we spent some time just explaining why we didn't have a jewellery box, the lights came on in the eyes of the people that were in this focus group, and oh right, okay, oh yeah, maybe we don't want a jewellery box after all. So there's an education thing going on there as well, isn't there? You know, there's something we've got to be able to tell the customers and explain why we're making these decisions.
Loads of brands are doing a fantastic job, and the one that jumps to mind as you're saying that, Victoria, is True Earth, the detergent brand. Have you seen the detergent brand True Earth? They've smashed every preconception of what the packaging should be, and it's in a really flat envelope because of the product. But they all over the packaging, they talk about why they've made those decisions and why it's better. So any kind of hesitation about, oh, this, I don't know, this detergent will possibly work, it's not in a plastic bottle, they get rid of it. They do a really good job, so I would recommend looking at them.
Great. We've got a couple of minutes. Has anybody got any questions for Sarah on what she's been talking through? Liz, did we have anything in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to ask Sarah something before we move on?
Yeah, so we've got one in the chat, and from Gemma, basically asking your view, or I guess the general discussion point around keeping dead stock or vintage synthetic materials out of landfill as an alternative to perhaps new cotton, which would obviously, the demand for new cotton uses a lot of water. So kind of what's your opinion on that? Because, you know, it's synthetics versus organic materials, but then it's also reusing what we already have versus demand for new.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. Of course, the answer to this, and the point that I should have made earlier, is there is no right answer to any of these things. They're all a balance. They're all your view, your perspective on it, and you're absolutely right. That is a fantastic thing to do to reduce landfill, and that's part of the reuse, really, rethink and reuse. So I would say absolutely a great idea. Any kind of recycled anything, and there will be some things that you've got to make your decision about. I just saw somebody put recycled leather ? Yeah, absolutely. But you know, if you personally feel leather's not for me, it's not aligned to who I am, it's not aligned to what I want to say with my brand, then that's fine too. There's no answer. We're all finding our way. So just be clear about the decisions you've made and why, and then that's okay with consumers.
Yeah,
can I just say something? Sorry, because I put recycled leather, because same for me, you know, it's like leather, you know, there are so many vegans now. Is leather really an appropriate product to be using? But there again, you know, if I'm selling something that's like 10, 12, 15,000 pounds, does it then require leather? I don't really know myself. I did make a box for a piece that I sold that was about that price. And I used actually leather that I'd been using to catch the gold on my bench. So yeah, is leather packaging still considered to be like a luxury item, or is it like yuck?
I think it depends on the consumer. Like there are so many different perspectives, and if I was in your shoes, I'd be saying just talk to some of your customers and see if they say yuck. I mean, actually, the story behind it's been on your bench, and that's a beautiful story. And the fact that you've
but I've only got a certain amount of, you know,
course,
I can only make a few boxes.
yeah,
That,
sure, but that sounds super premium and lovely. So
yeah,
it's about the story that you tell and how you want to share that with customers. But if in doubt, ask, because you know your audience.
yeah.
I like to say,
So if you're looking at a company, say like Bulgari, or I don't know, do they use leather?
I would doubt it, but I don't
Doubt it. Yeah, it's interesting.
And we'll come on later, Shakti, we'll come on to some other kind of leather alternatives and
Okay, all right. Sorry,
other
I hope
ideas
I haven't
around that.
taken up time, but
Don't worry, don't worry.
myself.
It's all relevant, all relevant. In the interest of time, then, I'm sure there are other questions as well, but in the interest of time, we're talking about that kind of personal journey and how it's got to kind of resonate with you and meet the needs of your customer, as well as these sustainability challenges. Our next speaker is Karen Johnson from self-titled Karen Johnson Design. Karen's been making jewellery for over 30 years, from one-off sculptural pieces to bridal jewellery, fashion catwalk pieces. And she's been on, we were just talking earlier, a very long journey towards more sustainable packaging, and she's going to share some of her highs and lows of that journey with you now for inspiration and learning. So hi, Karen.
Hello, Victoria. Hi. Hello, everyone.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. You're absolutely right. It is a journey. And I think that's, for me, I still haven't finished it. I feel that I'm very much on phase one. It was difficult. It wasn't easy. I did this a couple of years ago. I think things have changed since then. It's still moving forward because we're doing things like, you know, the last Sarah just said, you know, about asking questions of manufacturers. And for me, the biggest problem, stalling what was, you know, you're looking for often a product to be manufactured by somebody else, and you're trying to stretch their limitations, really. I suppose like everyone else, I started off, this was my initial boxes, very standard, and had the classic foam insert in. For me, this was the biggest issue. And I think often you have to find your own way and what's important to you and your brand as well. So my pieces range from about kind of 1,000 up to sort of 10, 15,000. So I felt I needed to stick with a box. I ship a lot to the States and in Europe, and I needed that security for me, peace of mind, because of the cost of the pieces that I was making. I think if I was producing like more lower end, you know, I was in the cheaper end of the market and producing, you know, silver pieces rather than one-off pieces, then I would have gone for different solutions. So that started me down the box thing, and I thought, okay, let's look at boxes. The main manufacturers, there was really very little. They were all using the foam insert still. There's a few, like Darlinger, I think they're starting to do an old cardboard box now with an embossed logo on it. And I got samples of those. I've got samples from all sorts of manufacturers, and I kept asking, so, you know, what are you doing? What can you do? But there was just very little choice, actually. So I ended up using the Tiny Box Company because they use recycled board, and they've got a good policy. As the lady was last saying, they are on it. You know, it's not just looking at what they're making, it's how they are producing the business as a whole. They're looking at all aspects of their business, and so all their offcuts go off to be recycled. You know, they're looking at, you know, waste within the company itself. So these are my boxes now. I had to go bespoke. I wanted to have a more luxe product, and I'll come to the reason why on that, because there was a tricky stumbling block which I need to still resolve. My reason for going for a luxe project, because of the type of work that I sell, but I also felt with that people are more likely to hold on to it and keep it at home rather than just dispose of it once they've received their item. And often I still get, if something comes back for repair or something like that, in the box that I sent it out in. So, this stuff isn't going into landfill, hopefully, as much. So the boxes are made in recycled board. I do have, and this is the sticking point, I did have a foil. The reason why I had to go for this was because at the time when I had these, I wanted to get an embossed logo that didn't have any foils or any printing, and Tiny Box Company didn't do that. And this is where I think, the more of us that keep asking this of these companies, the more they're going to change and adopt these different practices that are just better. So I was kind of a bit stuck, and the reason I used the foil was again to enhance the feeling of it being a luxe product, and hopefully at some point people hang on to the boxes. But it's the one thing that I need to change, and that will be my phase 2 of that. Now the inserts, as we've talked about it, it's just impossible almost. There was just nobody was making any inserts that were anything other than foam. Unless you can, there are some companies now, I think Dunge is doing one where they've got a cardboard insert with slits cut out of them. And that would certainly work for some brands. But for my pieces, because I make a lot of one-off pieces, they're often different sizes. I ended up I went to a Anglo Textiles. They deal in British wool, and I get felt now from them. Where are we? Here we go. Sorry, that's just wholly out of focus. So I have felt inserts. I had to get a die cut to fit my boxes. Some of the boxes that I use less often, like big necklace boxes, I actually just cut the felt myself. I have it on a roll. So this is British wool felt, which again was important to me. I do have to double layer this one because it's quite a deep box, because this is the maximum thickness I think you can get on felt. So I double layer that one up, and the inserts are cut to size to fit the boxes. And with things like necklaces and stuff like that, you can pin them to the felt. I've seen other designers that have created cotton rolls, and they put 2 in a box, and then you press the ring inside between the rolls. That seems to work quite well as well. So that was the boxes. Then ribbon, I use New Life ribbon. Beresford's now, they started off just all of their ribbon, satin ribbon as is now made from recycled plastic bottles. They've extended their range massively. When I first started looking, there was only a handful of colours that you could get. Obviously, there's a dilemma again. Do you go for ribbon that can be recycled and is biodegradable, or do you use ribbon that is come from recycled? You've got to make choices all the way through. You've got to make choices, and these choices are just what's right for you at the time. So for me, I ended up going for the recycled bottle plastic, and they're fantastic. They just feel exactly the same almost as the satin ones. There's no difference in them. And Beresford's now have continued, they've expanded their range. I think nearly all of their ribbons in all of the colours that they used to produce in satin are now made from recycled plastic bottles. So that was the choice that I made on that one.
And
Post
Karen, what sort of reaction have you had from your customers? Are they kind of receptive to what you've done? Do they like it? Are they interested in the fact it's sustainable?
Positive, actually, and I think if you do it as part of, you know, across the whole, looking at every aspect of your business, I am being asked more and more about sustainability, and I'm sure we all are, actually. And I think people love the fact that you've sat and thought about it and you're trying to do something. And even if you can't resolve everything straight away, then, you know, just start doing something, you know, even if you get halfway there, like, you know, I've still got to resolve the foil issue. But I'm sure by the time I've used these boxes and I go to place the next order, then there's going to be more companies that will be doing more different things because we're all asking. But yeah, customers love it. And I think there is a sense that they kind of look after things more, actually. I'm getting more customers, you know, that just hang on to the boxes much more. And I think that's a good thing, really. You know, it's maybe because you've considered it more, they're thinking, oh, well, you know, I better kind of look after this now. It's been thought about, really.
Great.
Yeah, the other aspects,
Sorry, Karen, just in the interest of time, we've also got on the call, we've got Alice Rochester. Alice is the senior designer and ethical ambassador for Harriet Kelsall Bespoke Jewellery, also on a journey to find more sustainable packaging. So it'd be interesting to see whether she's had similar kind of challenges to you, Karen, in terms of, you know, the availability of stuff, the choice, the number of suppliers that are out there. Alice, can we bring you in and hear from you, and then we can ask if there are any questions in the audience?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny, actually, listening to what Karen was saying, is that so much of it is the same. The search for trying to find something that has been locally made. I mean, we originally, I've actually got, because customers have brought us back old pieces of jewellery and picked up their boxes again sometimes. I have one of our original leatherette boxes that we had made. They were just standard boxes, but we knew we were looking for something better. But at the time, that was what we could find. We wanted something that would do what we wanted. We did get some wooden boxes made, which were very sweet, by a local carpenter. But he couldn't make them in the volumes that we needed. And, you know, so eventually that didn't work either. And what actually Harriet then thought of was these salt boxes, which are huge, but because they are what they are, they're actually designed for using as other things. So for the last few years, our jewellery has been packaged in these. They're made out of bamboo, which when we first started using it, we were really excited about, because it grows really easily. It doesn't need a lot of pesticides and chemicals and things like that to grow. And also it's quite good at kind of when it's being, you know, obviously because it's bamboo, in theory, end of life, it can be, you know, or break down and things like that. The problem that we've realized in the last few years is that because bamboo is getting used more and more, there are now problems with deforestation and monoculture and things like that. So if we continue to use bamboo, it will be because we have, we've been looking into new suppliers and things like that. Obviously, we are happy with the people that we've been working with. We've asked them all the questions about how they're farming and making sure that they're not doing anything horrible. But asking for certification for things like, you can, the bamboo, you can actually get FSC certified, which I didn't know, because I just thought FSC was to do with woodland. But they've got FSC certified bamboo, which is really exciting. And just making sure that you're asking for certification on all of these things. So if you're using fabrics, making sure that it's GOTS certified, for example. And, you know, we have been using some fabric pouches, but they're actually made, and I think they are a recycled plastic fiber. I can't think what it is for a minute. And to begin with, we were thinking, oh, no, I think this is okay because people are reusing them all the time. And, you know, but even that, we're just trying to work our way through what we've got and kind of work onto something new. So if we can find something that is either a bamboo fibre, because again, it's, you know, working with somebody that can use that, or an organic cotton or something. So if we do need a pouch to put jewellery in, that it is as good as it can be. The problem, obviously, with a lot of this stuff is that is partly to do with minimum order quantities, as Sarah was saying earlier as well. We're fortunate because we're a bigger company than some. We can order a certain amount in bulk, but even we can't meet most minimum order quantities. So, and we're also fortunate because we're in the countryside, we've got a big barn that we can store things in. So we're not trying to store it all underneath one workbench. So it does, we are really, really fortunate. We've got the opportunity to kind of make these choices. We are, the other thing with these bamboo boxes rather, is that we've had foam to go inside it, cut to fit, but that's also quite large. So even though this is reusable, and in fact, actually customers are keeping these and storing their jewelry in them a lot of the time, that is still not recyclable. So, and also that is very difficult to fit in your pocket if you're going to propose. So we're looking for smaller boxes, not just because of the proposal, the problem, but also because if we can go, if that can be smaller, then that can be smaller. And this is a work in progress, so I have just pulled it apart. But the difference potentially between using a piece of foam like that and using a piece of foam like that is quite dramatic. We're also, because we haven't been happy with the alternative foams that we found, we've been worried about tarnishing or, you know, the silicon allergies and all sorts of, you know what silicon allergies, can't think the word is. Anyway, so the various different things that we've looked at, this particular foam is actually made with a corn starch base rather than petrochemical. It's still plastic, it still can't be recycled, but actually if we can go smaller and we can go with something that hasn't got quite such a horrible base in the first place, then we think that is a step in the right direction. As both Karen and Sarah have said, it's a journey. We're just trying to make things better and kind of take our customers along with us, and kind of show them what we can do and how we can do it better.
That's great, Alice. It's really nice to see that progression over time.
Yeah.
How those, you can see the thought process that's gone into making those gradual improvements.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right that there's no kind of right or wrong answer. It's just doing the best you can with what's available to you and constantly trying to improve it and being honest with your customers about the fact it's a journey. Yeah. And that you know that elements of your product, like your foam, are maybe not quite as nice as your bamboo. Yeah. Yeah. I think also the other thing is like things like, so the foam, the inserts that we're looking at for new boxes, I mean, this isn't the right shape or anything else, but it's a bamboo fibre that is covering the foam. It's not stuck, there's not using any particular chemicals or anything like that. And it can actually be taken apart. So the cardboard insert, although I'm not going to be able to pull it apart now because I've just said I'm going to do it. You know, it is cardboard that is FSC certified, that can then be composted or recycled or whatever at a later date. But I think a big part of it is actually just not designing for landfill. You know, if we can design something that people are going to want to reuse and they're going to want to have one of these boxes, you know, we've found people that have been putting little plants in them, or they're reusing them as jewelry boxes, or they're putting it on their windowsill, and when they take their engagement ring off to do their washing up, that's where they're putting it. You know, it's just making sure that you're designing something that people want to keep and want to reuse. I think that's a really big part of it. Yeah. And it keeps coming back to, all of these conversations keep coming back to Sarah's 7 R's, don't they? Yeah, absolutely. That, you know, that kind of hierarchy of waste. You know, you do design it out to begin with, you know, reduce it down to the minimal amount possible, use mono materials so that they can be easily separated and recycled. It's, it's a big decision making process.
The point about people continuing to use it is such a good one, Alice, and actually giving them something they can keep on using is brilliant.
And they do, like you say, bring them, well, as Karen was saying, you know, when customers bring jewelry back to us, they often bring it back in the original box, and it's you know, it's good, it's lovely, and actually they're quite nice. Even the bigger ones are quite nice actually for the wedding ceremony. People kind of take them down the aisle in their box. It's just really cute.
Very nice. Yeah.
Okay,
Actually, the other
let's see
thing
if we've got any.
I was just going to say
Sorry.
really quickly, I think the like Karen's recycled ribbon's really beautiful. I think the new paper bags that we're going to have actually got paper ribbons that also feel like fabric. So again, that's, you know, talking about mono thing, that the whole thing can be recycled in one go. But that ribbon's so beautiful that I'm sure people are reusing that as well.
Great. Well, thank you both for sharing your stories. That's really interesting, really inspirational. We're really running short of time. I knew this was going to be a horrible one to try and keep within an hour. Liz, have we got any kind of questions that we haven't already touched on in the chat?
I mean, there is one question that's come through from Amanda, but before we go into that, there's been some really lovely kind of sharing of stories and journeys and resources and supplier information in the chat. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for doing that. So really,
and keep doing that.
keep
The
doing
more
that,
recommendations that we can get, we'll pull all of those together into a document that we can circulate afterwards. So if you've already solved a problem, or you know of something amazing that somebody's doing, then do share it. That's brilliant.
Yes, that's been really generous. And then Amanda was saying, if the speakers don't mind sharing, what sort of costs should jewellers be expecting to be paying per unit of bespoke, so, you know, sustainable packaging? So, for example, like a ring box, like what kind of costs are we expecting to pay for sustainable packaging for a ring box?
I'll have a look.
I have to admit, I haven't got the foggiest clue. What our journey particularly has been a really collaborative process, and so I've been starting off finding things and then kind of sending them in the direction of like either our marketing team or our Indy, who kind of basically just fixes stuff for us, and I've been letting them actually do the kind of further research of costing and things like that. I've just been kind of talking to them about materials, so I've been on the other side of it, unfortunately. Sorry.
I think cost also is relevant to, depends on your brand, doesn't it? You know, I mean, you're going to buy a box, or your packaging is going to be a percentage of the piece that you sell. So, you know, I mean, companies like the Tiny Box Company they're quite reasonable, actually. You'd be surprised. And I had bespoke boxes made with them, which you obviously pay more for, but it wasn't excessively expensive. And, you know, if you just they've got, you know, a standard range which you could put, you know, stickers on, or you know, emboss them yourselves or something like that. That's a way forward. Or again, you know, like Sarah was saying, putting it in a bag or something like that. So
I had an embossing stamp made. That's a lovely thing to do if you've never done that. And then I just embossed all my own cardboard so that it's got the stamp on it.
Great. We probably need to do a bit more digging into that, Amanda, in terms of pricing and things. I think it's a whole spectrum from a couple of quid for a basic kind of box up to £7-8 for, you know, the really fancy kind of hinged boxes, and you know, it's a real spectrum. Okay, so we've only got about 10 minutes left. I've got a few slides that I put together that I'm going to run through at 100 miles an hour, just with a bit more kind of inspiration and supplier information that might be helpful for people. I will whiz through these, but we'll send them out to everybody on the call following the event, so that you've got reference to them if you want to dig in a bit deeper. And then we'll hopefully have a little bit of time left for questions at the end of the session. Hang on a second, let's see if I can remember how to share my screen. You should be able to see it now. So just some additional kind of ideas around packaging innovation. So Sarah already talked about kind of considering where your paper comes from, making sure it's from a recyclable, it's from a recycled source, or it is recyclable at the end of its journey. It doesn't have to be from trees though. There's lots of kind of paper and board out there now that comes from really interesting stuff, depending on what motivates you as a brand. Recycled coffee cups, shredded up discarded textiles, all being made into paper. Elephant poo, which I thought was particularly amusing, maybe not relevant for jewellery. Don't know how you'd spin that one with your customers, but I liked it as a concept. Emma Aitchison Jewellery, you can see from this picture, is making boxes from mycelium, which is a kind of fungus that grows, and the box in this picture, I believe, is made in a mold, and it grows to fit the mold. It's kind of a mixture of kind of dry ingredients, agricultural waste, that the fungus fuses together into a completely compostable biodegradable box. So quite interesting and innovative. Fillers, we've said throughout this session, really painful. No definitive answer in how to, how to overcome the issue, but people are trying to make headway. We've talked about wool or felt, although I could see in the comments that there were some issues with tarnishing that people were worried about. Recycled polyester. The images in this picture are linen that's stuffed with cotton wadding and used to fill the boxes. Bamboo and cork also used. This brand, Gaia, use, again, bamboo fabric with a filling underneath it for the fitments in their boxes. So rather than having kind of the slits, they've got little kind of clasps and things that hold their fabric in place. Here's a picture of Karen's lovely packaging here, showing her inserts made from British wool. Pip, who I think is on our call today, she kindly shared some of the boxes that she's had created for her business. She's got a real focus on local sourcing, so you can see that her boxes are from locally sourced wood made in the UK. And again, she's got that kind of natural filling in her boxes. So it's still a box per se, but not a box as you might typically expect to find one. Pouches, again, Sarah talked about using organic cottons and fair trade cottons for pouches, but there's lots of other fabrics out there as well. This picture is a pouch made in Pinatex, which is pineapple leather. So we talked about recycled leather earlier. It doesn't have to be animal leather. Leather has become a term that's kind of bandied around outside of the animal industry now, and it can come from leaves. I think, Susie, I don't know if you wanted to say, you use fish leather in some of your packaging, don't you?
Yes, I use, it's a byproduct of the fishing industry in Tanzania. It's yeah, fish leather.
Which is another option. It's more sustainable than usual kind of animal leather that's been, through the horrible tanning process. So there are lots of different options around there. Again, it's reimagine, Sarah kept saying, and I completely agree with that. It's, we don't have to do what we've always done. Let's look at other options. Pouches, you can buy pouches off the peg. Minimum order quantities can be doable with some suppliers, but they can be prohibitive with others. Why not look at getting them made by a community project? So, packaging is not, we're not just trying to address an environmental issue with packaging. We should also be thinking about the social aspects that packaging production has. Work and Shelter, an amazing Indian organization that supports local women into work through making, and they make packages, bespoke packaging and pouches for brands. If you're in the UK, Birdsong also does something similar with very low MOQs, so maybe a partnership with a community project like theirs might be something that would work for you if you're developing pouches. They work with expert makers that face barriers to employment, usually refugees and migrant women. They're based in Tower Hamlets in East London, but again, they make little pouches and things that can be used for cosmetics and jewellery. And thinking outside the box, Sarah said that's an awful term, but I thought it was quite a good pun. It doesn't have to be the typical box. We can look to other industries to see what they're doing. The beauty industry seems to have progressed packaging far quicker than the jewellery sector has. And you know, there's kind of lovely little cosmetics pouches and pots and soap boxes and things that are made from biodegradable materials that could be repurposed perhaps for jewellery, with a bit of imagination and a bit of thinking. And Saskia, who I think is on the call, she's thinking outside the box because she uses upcycled or repurposed cosmetic pots to house her jewellery, and when she sends it out to her customers, so you know, reusing something that's been discarded, turning it into something beautiful that she can use to protect her jewellery, and potentially leaving her customer with something that's reusable for them at the end of the journey. Also in this document that we'll send around later, I've started to put together a list of some of the suppliers that either the Fair Luxury team have been working with or have been recommended through various conversations. We as an organisation don't recommend any particular supplier because we're not buying from them. So it would be down to you guys to do your own due diligence in terms of whether they work for you and where their materials come from, checking the certification and things, as Sarah said. But our aim is that we'll create a list here and keep adding to it and circulating it through the Fair Luxury website, so that we've got a bit of a repository of information, starting point for people who are on that packaging journey, because I think otherwise we're all spending a lot of time just scrolling through the internet, looking at different websites, and actually if we all work together and share our learnings, that can save a lot of time and energy. So yeah, so hopefully some of those slides will help, but as I said, we'll send those round after the event. We've only got a few minutes left. I mean, officially this session is supposed to end at 2. I mean, I'm sure we can keep the Zoom call open for slightly longer than that if people want to hang around to chat, but let's hear from some of the other people on the call. Has anybody got any questions or recommendations or just challenges that they'd like us to brainstorm while we're all together? You can either raise your hand or put something in the chat. Liz, have we got any other questions in the chat?
No, I think everybody's just enjoying the discussion and probably a bit comforted that everybody's on the journey somewhere, but no one's quite reached the final destination. There's not a perfect answer. So I think it's balancing, I guess, what you're comfortable with in terms of sustainability for your brand.
Well, just one observation. Somebody was just making a comment about worries about brands, how it impacts your brand if you're using different materials, and I entirely understand that. The one thing I would say though is I think that the public's perception is changing all the time. So don't be afraid of doing it differently, because I genuinely don't. I think it's much more to do with how you talk about why you're using that material. And that will really overshadow any kind of negatives on the material if you're kind of worried about that. Yeah, so I do get that, and I do get your reservation, having been a brand manager for many years. I understand entirely where you're coming from, but I would say I think that public perception is changing so much that the old norms of it must be a plastic box with a strong lid that snaps open and displays the piece. It's probably no longer quite so vitally slavishly followed.
Great, good advice. Claire Weldon, you look like you've raised your hand. Would you like to say something?
What I'd like to say is, I mean, we're manufacturers of handmade leather products, and the leather is used, is the byproduct of the food industry in Bangladesh where we work. My point is there's no way of being 100% sustainable anyway. And surely one of the things we all need to think about in the world altogether is lack of waste. In other words, being able to use something again and not wasting. And we make products that are kept for years. And the leather is biodegradable. So in the long run, it'll disappear, whereas plastic or vegan leather, which is basically 90% plastic, is absolutely useless in that respect. I just think we need to think of waste and mitigate the waste that we create by what we make. We can't do it 100%.
Great point. You're right. It's an ever progressing journey, isn't it, to keep trying to improve, and we won't ever get to a point where it's truly sustainable, because ultimately we're using natural resources. We're running businesses that rely on us taking materials and turning them into something and selling them on. So yeah, you're right. I think that's an interesting.
But our customers make very high-end jewelry on the whole, because we're obviously not very inexpensive. We're very well priced, but not inexpensive. And for very beautiful jewelry, it needs a nice presentation. And a paper box, if I got a piece of jewelry worth £10,000 in a paper box, I would be disgusted. I would want, and most people would throw them away, whereas our boxes do not get thrown away.
Which is great. And it comes back to, again, Sarah's hierarchy, doesn't it, of the 7 R's, which is before you even start sourcing, reduce it down, think about how it can be reused, how it can be, we can avoid it going into
it can be treasured. They're treasured. We make boxes with removable inserts in order that the box can be reused as a little trinket box. That's the whole ethos of what we do, and the boxes are kept for years. Anyway, all the best to everybody.
Thank you, Claire. We put a link to your company in the chat. I'm sure people will be interested if they're interested in sourcing leather boxes.
We have quite a lot of customers in your field anyway, thankfully. So
great.
We look forward to being after some more.
Hi there.
Hi, Alison.
Hi, thanks for the presentations today. I'm kind of encouraged and also just sort of gutted. I was hoping to kind of come and you'd all have these brilliant solutions for me. I've spent 2 years and still journeying. I've looked at boxes made from cornstarch, made by social enterprises in South America. I've looked at literally you name it, and trying to work out, is it better to have something made here that the material is less good, or is it better to have it made in China and then it's shipped? And it is hideous. I think the most difficult thing, what I was dreaming of a solution for today, is the insert. That's a real problem. And potters were great, because I have my partner laughs because I have a cardboard box literally half the size of my desk filled with box samples, packaging samples that I continually amass as I look for the perfect solution. And so I'd suggested felt to them, and so they had gone off and done this and very brilliantly done this tarnish, which I didn't know how they did it, but anyway, yeah, they then recently just messaged me back to say that unfortunately, yeah, it tarnishes. So that would be my warning to everyone, because I thought, yeah, that could be the solution. It also gives that look that people are all after, which is that it looks like you are considering and responsibly trying to package your items. So yeah, the search continues. Yeah.
I have to say, Alison, I haven't had any issues with tarnishing with the felt.
Oh, okay.
I haven't had a single customer. In fact, actually, I had more issues with tarnishing.
Is that on gold or silver?
It's, I do a lot of gold and platinum work, but are still, there are pieces that have gone off in silver as well. And I've been using it for, 2 years now, and I haven't had a single customer that's come back and said my ring's tarnished. Whereas actually with the foam inserts, I did have people coming back occasionally. I think there's chemicals used with the foam, and you have the little silicone packets and stuff in there as well, which is another thing you want to get rid of to absorb the moisture.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah, I mean,
actually, that they've, that the box manufacturers are saying yes, the felt tarnishes, because I've never experienced that.
Karen,
it would be
Karen and Alison, just pause for 1 second for me. I just want to say we've overrun our time. So for those that are having to leave, thank you very much for attending. I hope you found some useful information, even though probably not the solution that you were looking for, as Alison has said. Do make sure that you go onto the Fair Luxury website and sign up to our newsletter if you haven't already done so, because the recordings from this event and notification of further events will come through our newsletter. So just make sure you're signed up to that. So thank you, and to those who need to leave, please feel free. We'll leave this Zoom room open for another few minutes so that we can continue this conversation that we're having now. But thank you, and Karen and Alison and Shakti, carry on, please.
Yeah, because I want to make a point about wool. I really did a lot of research on wool, and it is one of the most horrific, unethical industries that is known to man. If you look at the way that the sheep are like, just the horrible things that happen to sheep, the antibiotics, the way that they're treated, it's incredibly unethical. So you really have to be careful. Where are you buying your wool from? Do you know the source? Do you know how the animals were treated? Do you know, was it like a kind of, one of these mass meat that's going to Sainsbury's and Tesco's and stuff? It's not as simple as just saying, oh, wool is ethical, because that's just not true.
I don't think any of us are saying that wool's ethical. Everything's just a total minefield, isn't it, really?
It is.
Yeah. And, this is where I think everybody has to weigh up, what's right for them at the time. And hopefully, as we go on, some of these issues are going to start to get resolved. But, if you're looking at wool versus foam inserts, you're looking at a wool industry that's in the UK versus oil industry. So where do you stand?
It depends on the rights of the sheep, though, doesn't it? Because
and that's I think what's important to you and to your brand. And I think we just can't resolve everything here. I think that's been the main message all the way through, isn't it? There's
I'm saying is I think you need to like check more deeply into the alternatives as well as the obvious. Get the alternatives, but don't just think that's necessarily ethical, because unless you start digging and looking deeper, you're not actually going to know the truth.
No, I think the one caution I made, not a caution is the wrong word, but everything is a trade-off. Everything is a compromise. There is nothing perfect. The only perfect will be no packaging. Let's be honest, that's the only perfect. No packaging, you just give it to the person that's bought it in their hand. But that isn't going to happen. So it's a case of the lesser evils. And personally, I'm vegetarian, but I also have a background in farming, so I know a fair bit about sheep farming. I would say of any farming, it's the least, well, certainly the least intensive. And so, but it's back to what's right for you, your customers, and your brand. And there is no perfect answer for definite. That's what I say.
I'm interested to hear a little bit more from Alison, because with her giant box of every sample known to man, where have you got to? What's your preferred option at the moment then?
Probably something I can't. Yeah, probably something I can't afford. We our business a little bit, sorry, but we have essentially two sets of packaging challenges to fulfill. One which is for, if you like, sort of sub 500 gifting, and then one which is predominantly engagement rings, so sort of 3,000 and upwards. So I'm effectively looking for two very different solutions, and with the lower end pieces, then we use the cardboard boxes are all good and stuff like that, but it's the filler that's the problem. And we use a ribbon across the board. We use pouches. We basically don't we do organic cotton pouches. We basically don't put customers' bags, and we haven't ordered any for years, probably 5 more years. We use a ribbon which, like Karen, is from recycled plastic bottles, but I don't know if I'd make. Again, this is as Sarah said, the challenge, that the problem with that is that obviously the ribbon is then not recyclable after that. So are you then better to use one that's from paper or etc.? And I suppose maybe also my problem is that I'm spending so long on this is that technology is constantly changing. So I'm always trying to sort of keep up and see what what is new. So
I think
yeah,
Kelsall ribbon
very
is
difficult.
one that's recyclable, isn't it? I don't know, Sarah, you might know a bit more.
Didn't hear what you said, Karen, about which was the
Kelsall ribbon.
a Tencel. I would have to double check.
Yeah.
But the issue is, one of the things to be really careful with this recyclable thing is it recyclable in a household environment?
Yeah.
Because that's the big question. It might be technically recyclable, but if consumers can't put it in the right bin, then it's no use. So that's just another angle, that's just another aspect to think about. Is it actually recyclable by the ordinary household?
Yeah, if you can't do it in your kitchen, then basically you won't.
Yeah.
And we didn't, with the time constraints, we didn't have a chance to talk about kind of plastic. I know Stuart had asked a few questions around packing tape, which is, you know, traditionally made of plastic. We all know that jewellery is transported in the tiny little Ziploc plastic bags, you know, that everybody ends up with a mountain of.
Yeah.
You know, that's a
get
whole minefield again, isn't it?
Yeah, you can get biodegradable ones of those, or particularly from food manufacturers, compostable ones. So
but again, Alison, you've got to be careful that whoever is the final recipient of that has access to the compostable facilities, because most composting is done on an industrial scale.
The other thing
that would in landfill.
And looking out for with the composting is that it is same thing, is home compostable, and there is an actual test that manufacturers have to go through, and they can get certification as to whether their material is home compostable or industrially compostable, commercial compost. I can't remember the phrase, but industrial compostable. It's two very different things, and if they're doing it properly, they will have a certification that says it's home compostable. So there's quite a rigorous process they have to go through.
Yeah.
Thing about asking questions and just pushing them on. Is it compostable on my compost heap?
Yeah, because the temperatures differences are massive, aren't they?
So it's different. Industrial composting is a different thing altogether.
I think you can get paper tapes now. I use paper tapes for.
Yeah, you can. I don't know much about the glue on them, but you can.
Yeah. The next thing, isn't it? Yeah. So
it's
I don't
know. Never-ending challenge.
Isn't it? Definitely.
Great, but one we're all committed to continuing to drive forward, and if we can keep coming together and sharing learnings like this, then hopefully we will get there in the end, or at least get a step nearer to it. So thank you again for everybody who's joined today. You know, feel free to drop the Fair Luxury team a line if you've got further questions, or you want to share information that you found out. We'll try to create a kind of database of information that people can access more frequently. And also feel free to stay connected with each other as well, because working together on some of these projects makes it a lot nicer, a lot easier. So thank you very much, and we'll hopefully see you at the next open house.